Good morning, everyone. This is Inta Mitterbach. I'm in Lakewood, Ohio, of the United States, and this is an amateur audio broadcast. It's a Northern Border broadcast production, of which is a fictitious entity. Today is Friday, April 27th of the year 2012. And it is 7:23 a.m. That's U.S. Eastern Time, and the temperature outside, according to my thermometer out there, it's 40 degrees Fahrenheit. It is chilly, but I've been out there, and I have a difficult time believing that it's actually down to 40 degrees, but that's what the thermometer says, and the photo in the background is a freshwater aquarium. That's a little red-eye tetra there that you can see, and I've got, I don't know, maybe about a dozen fish in there. It's a 29-gallon aquarium, and live plants and bubblers, and that's a lot of algae on the back wall. I actually, here's your tip for the day. Backgrounds on the aquariums, and depending on the size, I use, mat board from frame shops and craft stores. I use, and you can go to like a frame store where they do matting and framing, and let them know what the measurements are, and they'll cut a piece of mat board for you that will fit, or you can cut it yourself if you buy the mat board, but you can go to a frame store and they'll cut the mat board for you, and you've got a pick out whatever color you like, and I don't know if they have different designs or whatever of the mat board, but one of the ideas that I had was to do set up aquariums as far as businesses go. I've been a tropical aquaria hobbyist since I was, I think about, 12, 14 years old maybe, probably about 12. And so it's been that's 32 years ago. 32 years of playing with aquariums and tropical fish. And I've never done a saltwater aquarium. I'm terrified of trying to do a saltwater aquarium and balancing all the environmental whatever. It just seems too, I don't know. I don't know enough about it, and it seems too critical, the balance to play around with and jeopardize the lives of the fish. So I have not tried to do that yet. I don't have the confidence to do that. I did actually, though, in terms of confidence, I replaced a light fixture at my parents' house a few months ago, and last October, and I guess that's about 6 months ago. And I'll tell you what, I've never done any electrical work, and I thought, geez, this can't be too difficult. I was terrified. I was afraid, am I going to... They went away for the weekend, and I thought I'd surprise them and do some work on their house and make all kinds of repairs and fix things, and I did. And one of the things I did was replace a light fixture, and it really wasn't very difficult. I had seen a how-to video on television, and so I wasn't completely unfamiliar, but it did take a degree of confidence in order to get myself to the point where I felt like, oh, okay, let's try doing this, and we're not going to burn the house down, and I did, flip off the power down on the the fuse box and everything, killed all the power while I was doing my work so I didn't kill myself. And so anyway, I did do that. I was kind of proud of that. But anyway, as I was saying, freshwater aquariums, and I like that. I've got a couple of them, and it'd be nice if I had one in every room of the house. I like them. I came up with an idea, which I'm not going to share with you, but I came up with an idea for my master. I don't know, maybe I'll share it with you some other time. I'm not going to share it with you right now. My master's, what was called the capstone project, and came up with an idea that involved aquariums and the United States, and I think it might have been Ethiopia, and where else was I? I don't know. Thailand, Ethiopia, and the United States. A combined effort that I used for my capstone project, which is basically, I guess, comparable to your thesis working on your master's. And I think you know I'm supposed to, well, I started a PhD program. Well, who am I? I'm into Mitterbach, and I'm in Lakewood, Ohio. I don't know if I mentioned that. The photo there in the background in the top corner, that's a photograph that I took last night. The Cleveland police had told me I'm not allowed to take any industrial photos in the United States because it's illegal throughout the United States according to the United States Patriot Act, which was enacted as a result of the 9/11 activity. And I've read it. I don't have it in front of me at the moment, but I guess technically you're not allowed to take any industrial photographs anymore in the United States, according to the Cleveland police, which is stipulated in the I guess it must be stipulated by the police according to their interpretation, or the interpretation that has been handed down to them with regard to the Patriot Act. But anyway, that's in Avon, Ohio, that little photo. It's a power plant, and it was taken last night, Thursday, April 26, 2012, at approximately 7:10 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time Zone, also known as 1910 hours. I think. Is that how you say military time? 1900 hours? That's 7 o'clock? 1910? I don't know. It's 1910, whatever. So, what else do I have to say here? I was going to talk, I did a paper in a speech class at Cuyahoga Community College, and it was a paper, and it was a speech, and I was going to kind of go through that. It was a slide presentation that I did, and I borrowed some information and material I found online to try to teach the class. I guess I was interested in things like physics and lasers and science, and so I used some things online that I found, and I think it was a presentation, maybe by I don't know if it was a physicist or who it was, but I found some things online and some great drawings and photographs that I'm not going to share with you in this broadcast, but I tried to explain to the students in my speech, practicing being my little professor self, what lasers are and how they work, and actually, I go through this, and I had a tutor when I was working on my associate's degree in science, and he turned out to be a professor of physics at Delaware Technical Community College, and I think that was in Wilmington, Delaware. And I bumped into him in the space chat room on AOL back when those were still around. I think that's pretty much gone. I don't know. Does anyone still chat on AOL? I think I chatted with about 10,000 people, or at least I was under the impression I had. And may have been more than that if there was an audience. I may have been chatting with roomfuls of dozens of people, for all I know, in bars and offices and places all over the country, maybe even all over the world. But anyway, I did this speech on lasers for my speech class, working on my Associate of Science, and gosh, I don't even have a date here. That's bad. I've got the cover page here, the cover page on the presentation, and there's not even a date. But I think it was probably, I don't know, September or October of 2004 that I gave this presentation. Well, what's the date here? There was an article, an internet article, excuse me, that I found, and it was I think found on How Stuff Works, which is a internet site, and the article, I think the author of the article was identified as being Matthew Weschler, and basically I presented it. And I'll go through this just, I guess in terms of verbally. I basically had a series of slides that I put together, but the information came from www.howstuffworks.com, and there may have been some other sources also. And I think identification of sources was not necessarily part of the project that we were doing here, but in hindsight, doing speeches and slide presentations, definitely you would want to identify sources at a professional level anyway. And I was a student working on this. I don't know what the class number was, but it was a speech class. So anyway, first thing I talk about is the LASER acronym. The word LASER is actually an acronym, and it stands for Light Amplification by Stimulated Emission of Radiation. And so you can take a while just thinking about that and trying to understand what that means. And the one thing, and I don't think it's in this presentation, but the one thing, I started talking about my my professor that helped tutor me through math classes online. And the professor, he was a physics professor, and it's really kind of a challenge getting through math. Oh gosh, he would keep me up until 4 o'clock in the morning online, cramming my tiny little brain full of physics instruction, and it was kind of an interesting exercise in trying to learn math and physics online through a little chat window, and how to write the, I guess, what is it, not the formulas, but the, I can't think of the mathematical equations, I guess. And so, doing that online and typing the whole thing and trying to we never spoke over the phone, but we did correspond over the computer via the internet for actually a number of years. And I think he's tired of me. I've written him a few emails, some of them my madness, and of which he's probably said, well, okay, goodbye. But anyway, he was really tremendously helpful, and he was my my priceless and he was my salvation through the associate program and getting through the math and physics. And I don't know, maybe I could have gotten through it by myself, but he really was tremendously helpful, and it was a pleasure knowing him online. And there was he was particularly interested in lasers and also space and astronomy and NASA. And so I learned about lasers, and that kind of got me interested more in lasers, that he introduced me to that. And there was, I think I picked up a couple books on lasers, and, well, at least one, and I'll tell you what I've got here. There's a book, and it's Laser, Light of a Million Uses, and I think actually he may have recommended that to me, I'm not sure. But it's a Dover book, and it looks like it's by Hecht and Teresi, and I don't know what the copyright is, but I did read that, and I haven't read a lot of books. I've got a lot of books. I haven't read them all. I have read a lot of books, but I haven't read a lot of my books, all of them. I've got a lot of them. But anyway, it said something about lasers. The concept of lasers, what actually originated in science fiction, like late 1800 science fiction, and back, and I don't know if it was Orson Welles or who it was that had already introduced lasers, and that was 19th century, late 1800s, and that it was originally introduced, and I don't know prior to that whether or not, but according to that book, I think that I recalled that lasers, the concept or idea of lasers has been around at least since then. So laser products have been used in CD players, dental drills. Yeah, I didn't even, I didn't even think about that. Dental drills, scalpels. Now scalpels, I had a laser surgery. I had for my second daughter, I had a cesarean and cesarean delivery, surgical delivery, and because my little baby was a breech baby, supposedly, and they used a laser. They used laser surgery for the cesarean, and I don't know. I didn't expect that. They didn't discuss that with me prior to the surgery and how they were going to do it. We tried to plan everything. They did do a laser surgery. My daughter wound up, there was, you think about lasers and what the intensity is and the depth and everything, and I don't know how experimental my surgery was. That was back in 1991, and so that's 21 years ago. But the anesthesia did not really quite take full effect, I guess it had taken some effect, but it wasn't enough. And I will say that it hurts. Laser scalpels, I guess they're called. Yeah, it definitely hurts. I didn't expect that. So anyway, more laser products include metal cutting tools, measuring systems, and I think too, it doesn't say anything here in terms of laser products. Another example of laser products, I think, is like sensors, laser beams used in sensors, because if you break the beam, for example, when I worked at NASA, we had a counter on the doorway to keep track of how many visitors there were, and basically I think what that was probably a laser and a laser sensor, so that the laser beam actually was broken every time someone walked through, and the sensor at the other end, kept track of the broken signals, and so. Anyway, in terms of measuring systems, it's probably, it's a combination of lasers and laser sensors. And then there's the model of an atom. I guess I tried to take a look at the model of the atom that as it relates to lasers and what's going on there. And you've got the protons, neutrons, electrons, whatever. I'm looking at small pictures, but anyway, I talked about the atom and went over the model of an atom in my presentation. And what do we have here? I guess what I was showing them is the electrons and the nucleus and the orbits of the. I guess those are orbits of the electrons and the inside of an atom. And, I don't know if this is probably from Matthew Weschler's, I don't know if that was a paper that he worked on and whether or not he did all of these diagrams, but these diagrams are excellent. And there is something here. How it works is identified as as far as the diagram shown there. It looks like how it works was the source of the diagram there. And so anyway, then I talked about absorption of energy and I guess electrons changing orbital paths, and I guess going from one orbital path to another, maybe what it's talking about here is absorption of energy, and in the form of heat, light, or electricity, and they may be moving from lower energy to higher energy or higher energy to lower energy, depending on what conditions they're exposed to, I guess, probably. And, I did my science degree, I used physics and astronomy classes to complete the requirements of my Associate of Science. And I am by no means a physicist. I did manage to meet a man who has a PhD in physics, and his specialization was nuclear physics. And I guess he had done work at I think it was Rensselaer University, and having to do with somehow he had calculated or come up with a calculation, I think, as I understand it, a calculation to just determine or he came up with a method to calculate the dispersion of a nuclear accident, the effect of nuclear accident maybe in terms of exposure and exposure rates and things like that. So he was working with that. And another thing that might be interesting for you to know that I didn't know was that his work, his PhD work, was sealed by his university, and I guess classified, so that it's not something that that kind of makes me angry, because I think of the work you do, and okay, so you can't work on that anymore unless they say you can work on that, and they're going to control all of that work, and so anyway, I guess whatever work he did, it was sealed by the university and classified at some level, and you no longer have access to that unless it is controlled access. And so there's something else to think about. One of the things with regard to physics that I had there's a small town out in Wyoming I had traveled to called Laramie, and it was a really nice town, and I really liked it there when I traveled out there. Excuse me. And there is a university there. It's the University of Wyoming in Laramie, and it just seemed like a really nice place. I mean, if you wanted to go off, I grew up in Cleveland, and I'm in the Cleveland, Ohio area. And I love the mountains and out west, and it just seemed like, and I'm 48 years old now. It's kind of difficult at this point for me to just, go off, and so at the time, I was in, I guess, my late 30s, kind of difficult to just go off and start at that point being a student, and having a regular student life. Well, I'm just going to go off to school and go get a degree, and I want to get a PhD, and I'm going to get a dorm, and, by the time you're in your 30s, you kind of miss the opportunity, most of us anyway, to go off and go off on a traditional student path that you had not done earlier before you had other responsibilities. But anyway, the University of Wyoming in Laramie had a nuclear physics PhD program, and I don't know if they had a bachelor's, master's, PhD, but I think they did have a nuclear physics program there, and I was kind of I guess, what was I going to do with nuclear physics? I really don't, nobody even likes nuclear power plants. And I didn't even know what no nukes means, but, well, what was I going to do with that, and who was I going to work for? And, I guess it just seemed interesting to me because I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about physics before I took a physics class. Not that everybody knows about physics. We have microwaves, we have light, we have sound, we have all of these things that we just don't think about. Well, I didn't anyway, in terms of physics. And, heat and all the forces of physics. I didn't take physics in high school, so I guess everyone else does or did, and everyone knows what physics is. But I didn't know what physics was, and I was kind of intrigued by it and interested and actually even scared because I didn't know what it was. And, I was scared of failing the tests and the classes and not being able to get through it. And but lasers are part of physics, and so anyway, that's that. So it goes on with the speech: photons and light emission of light, okay, well, you've got photons, whatever that is. And I probably had a better understanding of this stuff at the time than I am recalling now. Again, maybe it's I didn't wind up working in physics and lasers and all that, so, and this is the first time I've really looked at this paper, and, I'm doing this, I didn't prepare for this little audio, I'm just going through this right now. So then there's something called ruby lasers, of which is a flash tube like you would have on a camera. It says, and a ruby rod and 2 mirrors and 1/2 silvered. and the ruby rod is the lasing medium, and the flash tube pumps it. And there's a diagram here, and it's basically a tube, and I guess I was trying to understand in terms of the laser. I had like a little laser pointing device, and I guess they're using those for cats. And as far as lasers go, there's safety issues because, and not only physical safety, but there's like trauma. Lasers have been used for like gun sights, I think, in terms of targeting whatever their targets are. I think the lasers have been used. So, I was at downtown Cleveland, I don't know, maybe about 14 years ago, and I had become a deacon at Old Stone Church at the time, and I was going to meetings. I don't know if it was monthly or weekly meetings downtown at night, at the church, and doing good community work and stuff like that. So I was leaving the meeting, and it was probably 9 o'clock at night downtown Cleveland. There weren't a whole lot of people, if any, down there. I think it was probably pretty barren. And in downtown Cleveland, yeah, this great big metropolitan city called Cleveland, Ohio. There's nobody even around. Where did everyone go? So anyway, here I am downtown and walking to my car, and I get lasered. And it's like, okay, well, there's like a little red laser dot on the sidewalk at my feet, and a little red laser dot. I look down, and then there's a little red laser dot on me. And it's like, oh, okay, all right, well, the snipers got me, I'm dead. And it was upsetting. It was very upsetting. I wound up, rushing home. I was upset. I was crying. And, I had worked for a defense contractor. I had a little trauma there because there were some issues I had to deal with, and I don't know exactly what happened, but I got hurt. So when I got lasered in downtown Cleveland, it was kind of like I was already in shock and had already been traumatized and shell-shocked, I guess. And when I got lasered, it just kind of sent my head spinning even that much further into trauma. And, is there a sniper in the parking lot, the fourth floor of the parking lot across the way that just, was playing Snipe the Little Mouse? And so I don't know where it was coming from. I couldn't identify the source. I think, if you've played with lasers, it's very, you can, they travel quite a distance, and there was some work being done, I think, by the University of Michigan students. I'm not sure if that's correct, but I think it was in Michigan. And I think they were working with lasers and reflectors on the moon or something. And I started thinking about reflective surfaces and, lasers and you've got variations and strengths of the beam, and you've got different types of lasers. You've got intensity of the beam. You've got area of the beam. You've got so I started thinking, how far does a laser go, and the intensity and things like that, and how far can you bounce a laser, and then, of course, the wonderful thing is all the laser light shows, of which are not dangerous lasers, but there are, depending on the intensity, more or less dangerous, and also the type of laser, more or less dangerous types of lasers. So anyway, but here we go. So I talked about ruby lasers and excited atoms and the movement of the atoms and how that works in the light tube there, and then you have the emitted light, and then I talked about stimulated emission, and I'm not going to go into a lot of depth here because I don't recall what all this stuff is and how it all works, but also lasers and mirrors. The key to a laser is a pair of mirrors, one at each end of the lasing medium, and photons with a very specific wavelength and phase reflect off the mirrors to travel back and forth through the lasing medium. And I guess, I don't know, I don't recall, but this may have been all kind of, I don't think this was an article that was directly copied of Matthew Weschler, but I think I tried to present, this may have been basically what Matthew Weschler was using for, and I don't know if Matthew Weschler was a student or a physics professor or professional or what, but anyway, I think most of this was probably from a presentation that he may have given, or I don't know, I don't recall, but anyway, lasers and mirrors, in the process they stimulate other electrons to make the downward energy jump and can cause the emission of more photons of the same wavelength and phase, and a cascade effect occurs, and soon we have propagated many, many photons of the same wavelength and phase. So you've got wavelengths to consider. Well, it's all that physics stuff, photons. So lasers and mirrors. The mirror at one end of the laser is half silvered, meaning it reflects some light and lets some light through. I guess if I have to stand up there and talk about this stuff and explain it and really answer your questions, I'm not an expert. I'm just, it was an introductory kind of introduce lasers, and I think at the time back in I guess this was given in 2004. Back at that time, I don't know, maybe everyone already knows what lasers are and how lasers work. I guess I didn't. Maybe the whole world already had learned that and understood how that all worked. But anyway, the light that makes it through, I guess, the mirror at the one end that's half silvered is what makes the laser light. And there's different types of gases, I think, that are used for different types of laser lights, and the different types of gases that are used for the lasers will produce different color lasers. And one of the things, I had wondered about, because I felt like my eyes got lasered driving down the road one day, and I remember hearing the story about the airplane pilots getting shot in the eyes or something with lasers when they were up there flying. How do you prove that, and how do you deal with that? And gosh, isn't that a horribly dangerous experience to have, not only for the pilots but for their passengers? And so anyway, one of the things that I had thought about is, we've all seen the little laser pointers and the red lasers and things like that, but there are different gases that are used, and there are different color lasers, and I don't know if anyone has been to the laser light shows, but I think there are blue lasers, green lasers, all colors of the spectrum, of which can be used more or less dangerously, and probably, not that I know. And so I had considered, what about white lasers? And white lasers would have, maybe the same effect, could have potentially a very dangerous effect, and you would not even see them. And, if you start thinking about white lasers, and I don't know if white lasers, I don't even know enough about it to know whether or not white lasers exist, but white lasers, as, just thinking about that idea, white lasers would not be detectable visibly and would potentially cause a great deal of damage and harm. And, in terms of reflective surfaces and things, you could, I think, with lasers, you don't necessarily have to see. I think, maybe people think of lasers as the sight that is used for a gun, maybe in terms of weapons, but maybe they had not considered the possibility of a white laser being used as the gun, of which is visibly sighted by other means. So that's going to be a real problem, especially depending upon reflective surfaces. And I haven't done a lot of experimentation with it, but what comes to mind right now is, and I haven't done. I had a little red laser that my daughter gave me, a pointer laser, when I was in my speech class. She gave me that, and and I kind of played with it, and they say, don't shine it at your eyes, and and then my sister got one recently to play with her cat, and it's like, those are dangerous. They shouldn't be selling those to people to play with their cats if those are, potentially burn eyes. And but I had shined my little laser across the street, and it was in terms of how far can you see the laser, how far will it go, because I was shining it in the house, and I didn't know, in terms of surfaces, and I think there was something about, laser, you can shine a laser across a football field, so I was kind of like trying to see, well, how far away can the wall be to shine at, and I used the house across the street. And yeah, you can definitely see it on the walls of the house across the street. And the other thing, what was my other point about this? There was, I think, mirrors. I haven't tried that, pointing the laser at a mirror and seeing whether or not, it actually will reflect different, I don't know if, and also the intensity and things like that. Is the intensity of the laser reduced or, I don't think it's going to increase, but I guess depending on what what you're shining a laser through, it actually might be increased depending, I don't know, you start talking about prisms and things like that, but anyway, I guess I showed the class electron orbits and tried to talk about that and how that relates to lasers. And this is and that's all of the we learn about all of that in chemistry class. And I haven't successfully gotten through chemistry because I think I get so I don't know. I kind of take everything to the nth degree, and I just don't. And I don't memorize things very well, but so. But I think a lot of this is stuff that you learn in chemistry class, electron orbits and protons, neutrons, and all of that. But what I have here that I showed the class with regard to lasers is emission wavelengths, and it lists a number of types of lasers and those wavelengths. And what would be the significance of the wavelengths? I mean, I'm just trying to understand this here. The wavelengths are in, I don't know if it's NM, so I don't know if that's nanometers. I'm not sure. But there's a variation in wavelength from 193 on up to 10,600. And the wavelengths will, well, what's that going to determine? The different types of lasers in terms of gases, I think these are all gases. Argon fluoride, krypton fluoride, nitrogen fluoride, and these are increasing from lower wavelength to higher wavelength, as from the lowest wavelength on up to the highest wavelength. So anyway, argon, krypton, nitrogen okay, there's argon fluoride, which is UV, ultraviolet, and then there's krypton fluoride, which is UV, ultraviolet. Then nitrogen, ultraviolet, argon is blue, and then there's an argon green at a different wavelength. Oh, that's right, wavelengths. Those are the points on the spectrum. So helium neon is green. Helium neon, there's a red, and there's a rhodamine 60 dye, tunable, of which has a range of wavelengths. And then there's ruby, and then, well, a ruby red, which I think was the laser that basically I was demonstrating, I guess, in my speech, and then there's what's ND? ND, that's an abbreviation, a chemical element. ND, I don't know that off the top of my head, but there's an ND, and that wavelength is over 1,000. And then there's carbon dioxide, a carbon dioxide laser, of which is 10,000. It's over 10,000. The wavelength is over 10,000, and So anyway, I feel as though I'm being lasered right at this very moment, which isn't real nice. But there's my instruction in lasers. Yeah, I got my demonstrations with regard to lasers, and they do actually hurt. And so laser light basics was the next slide that I presented, and that was with regard to monochromatic light. And yeah, they can do a lot of fun things with lasers. They can make you feel like you've got an itch you need to scratch, and isn't that funny? So laser light basics, aren't the students clever? Aren't they really clever? What are they going to get the professor to do? What are they going to demonstrate that they can get the professor to do with their lasers? So anyway, there's monochromatic light, one specific wavelength, one specific color, of which the various different types of lasers. Each one will have a specific wavelength. Each laser and each of those wavelengths will have a specific color, and or vice versa. And the wavelength of light is determined by the amount of energy released when the electron drops to a lower orbit. What does that mean? I'm not going to go there. Okay, so laser light basics. There's then it goes on to say the light released is coherent, whatever that means. And maybe I understood that at the time. And it's organized. Each photon moves in step with the others, and all the photons have wave fronts that launch in unison. And then there's different laser lights. A flashlight, which releases light in many directions, and the light is very weak and diffuse. And in comparison to a laser, the light is very directional and has a very tight beam and is very strong and very concentrated. And yeah, I didn't even consider that, the concentration of the light. In terms of intensity, I guess it would be the concentration. So then you've got stimulated emission, and what did we talk about here? Stimulated, well, it says to make these properties occur takes something called stimulated emission. This does not occur in your ordinary flashlight. In a flashlight, all of the atoms release their photons randomly, and in stimulated emission, photon emission is organized. So it sounds like, basically with a flashlight that we're all familiar with, the light is scattered, and with the laser, the light is focused. And so then with laser types, there's a solid state laser, which has lasing material distributed in a solid matrix, such as a ruby or neodymium, yttrium, aluminum, garnet, YAG lasers. I guess neodymium, I guess, may have been the is that the ND that we had previously? Was that ND? What was it? There was, yeah, ND. The ND is neodymium, and YAG, whatever YAG is. And a nanometer is 1 × 10⁻⁹ meters, which is very, very tiny. Whatever 10 to the negative 9 is that like, is that 0.0, 8 zeros followed by a 1? Do I recall that correctly? Something like that. It's a very small decimal number. It's a point something 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 something, or 0.0000 on to the negative 9th one. So anyway, gas lasers. Let me try to get through that. I always have to think about these things a little more intensely than probably most people do, who just know this stuff off the top of their head. But laser types, there's gas lasers. Helium and helium neon are the most common gas lasers. There's a primary output of visible red light. The CO2 lasers emit energy in the far infrared and are used for cutting hard materials. Yeah, the in terms of applications, one of the things that I thought about is, and especially, I think I may have been actually laser assaulted in my home, and it wasn't very, it's really not very funny. I wound up in the hospital, and I don't know if it was kids or who was doing it. That's pretty criminal, and so the in terms of industrial uses and lasers, what occurred to me is that my ex-husband, he was in industrial sales, specifically steel, of which not only was he in the business nationally but internationally, and I learned a lot when I was married to him about industry and the steel industry and sales and manufacturing and things like that. Not only steel, but other metals and industries and metallurgy and things like that. And so one of the things about, what was I going to say here about, one of the things that I learned from him is that when industries shut down, when steel mills shut down, they open up industrial areas, they auction the industrial, maybe an industrial plant shut down, and then they hold auctions for the equipment in those industrial facilities. And I started thinking, oh my God, oh Jesus, who got their hands on what? Going to these auctions, and they could have gotten their hands on laser cutters and modified them and used them as weapons. And is that what they did to me? And is there an invited list for those industrial auctions and industrial sales that occur when those industries shut down? Or could anyone go, anyone with money go into those industrial sales and start, if you start getting your hands on the things that they have available in industrial areas, of which are very, very closely monitored and regulated, and we have laws, federal laws with regard to industrial. You have to pass OSHA standards, and you have to maintain certain standards and control environments and control machines and things like that, and that's all governed and regulated, well, not necessarily governed, but regulated by the federal government of the United States. And so once you start walking away with all of that stuff, it's, once that plant shuts down, those things have left that regulated environment. And, where did they go? Where did they go, and who got their hands on them? And is that what they were doing to me? Had someone gotten their hands on industrial lasers and modified them, and maybe a bunch of students were playing with lasers, or maybe a laser lab was broken into, and all of the laser, so there's a lot of hazards and risks associated, with regard to criminal activity and the use of lasers. And I guess I started worrying, oh geez, have they taken something again that was, intended for good purposes? But, then of course, I think in terms of my background in history, I worked for, a couple Department of Defense contractors, and which had to do with military weapons. So, I've got that background and the fear of, oh geez, are they making laser weapons now? And I'm sure they are somewhere, and I'm not familiar with that, and I don't know where, and I don't know how, and I don't know who, but, I guess I know enough, and I've had enough experience to say or wonder or think, oh Jesus, now what are they doing? So anyway, there's this, so you've got the laser types, you've got gas lasers, and then I go on, this is laser types continued. Helium and helium neon, HENE are the most common gas lasers and have a primary output of visible red light. CO2 lasers emit energy in the far infrared and are used for cutting hard materials. I don't know, at the far infrared, if you think in terms of the spectrum, take a look at the wavelengths, lower wavelengths, higher wavelengths, and intensities and things like that, and consider what lasers will do, depending on the wavelengths, what they'll do. I think lasers were being used for cutting steel, so that's pretty. I think everybody knows that. I think, a million years ago they were, how long have lasers been around? Where have I been? Because I think they were using lasers for engraving back at the little engravement huts. I don't know, were they using lasers or were they using metal engraving tools? But, lasers have been used for engraving, and and here it is. How long, well, the concept of lasers has been around for 120 years at least, and I don't know when lasers first were developed or who developed them, but they've been around for a while, and if they're cutting through metals, that's pretty intense. So anyway, it goes on. Laser types continued. Excimer lasers. The name is derived from the terms excited and dimmers. They use reactive gases such as chlorine and fluorine mixed with inert gases such as argon, krypton, or xenon. And when electrically stimulated, a pseudo-molecule dimer is produced. And when lased, the dimer produces light in the ultraviolet range, UV range, whatever all that means. So anyway, and then it goes on to, it talks about dye lasers, which use complex organic dyes such as rhodamine 6G in liquid solution or suspension as lasing media. They are tunable over a broad range of wavelengths. And then laser types continued. Semiconductor lasers, which are sometimes called diode lasers and are not solid-state lasers. And these electronic devices are generally very small and use low power, and they may be built into larger arrays such as the writing source in some laser printers or CD players. And so I guess that's all I had. What did I say here? Solid-state lasers. I'm sorry, I don't know exactly what that is. And larger arrays, writing sources, laser printers. Yeah, I guess you can modify a laser printer and pull out the lasers that are used in laser printers and reassemble those in some way that maybe you could use, make a fun little gadget out of those, and maybe some sensors and lasers out of your laser printers. Can you rebuild a device to do a traffic sensor, just a walking path traffic sensor or something like that? And I think lasers are used is it lasers in grocery stores for the scanners? Are those laser that read the barcode labels? I'm not sure. That might be lasers. And what else? I think maybe the police use lasers for their speed detection gun scanners. But for all I know, the police are using laser weapons at this point, and that's pretty dangerous. And I'm not sure what hit me or how, but I got hit with something back in 1996. I don't know if it was a type of laser or what it was. Maybe I got hit by everything, but when I was working at a defense contractor. So, and I was just a little secretary. But anyway, I think that's about all I have on lasers. And, as far as, I guess I was trying to go through some of my papers and, just reread these and add my comments because, at the time I had interests in these things. And so I just wanted to maybe pass that on. So anyway, now it is 8:16 a.m. I've been talking for about 54 minutes, and it is Friday, April 27th, 2012. It is, my name is Inta Mitterbach, and this is an amateur audio broadcast, and The power plant in the little photograph in Avon, it doesn't look like that is operational to me. It looks like that's shut down, but I don't know. I was always fascinated by all of those electrical, whatever those power plant, all of that metal stuff, whatever all that stuff is. When I was a kid, it was like, what is all of that, and how does that all work, and what's it for, and how did they build that, and things like industrial plants. I've got, what the heck is it? There's some books that I have on, I was fascinated. I had a friend that worked at, I think it was U.S. Steel, and I went out there, and it was in, where is it? It's west of Cleveland. I don't think it's Avon. I'm sorry, I can't recall right at this moment. But U.S. Steel is absolutely huge, and I drove around that. The plant out west of Cleveland, it's absolutely huge, and I was just totally fascinated with how big it is and how that was all organized into a production facility. And you start thinking about Henry Ford and the automobile production, and just it amazes me how that's all put together, and it's all designed and organized to work together in a manufacturing process that actually, I guess production and manufacturing is somewhat fascinating to me, and that place is absolutely huge, and I don't know how operational that is. I think a lot of it had been shut down, but parts of it were still working, anyway, what was my point there? In terms of industry, I just I don't know what's. It seems like a lot of the industry has shut down in the Cleveland area. And, it's great for the pollution, because the pollution was much lower than it used to be. I think a lot of that stuff caused pollution, maybe, but I don't know. I don't know what the situation is, but it seemed like a lot of the manufacturing. And also, I've noticed the traffic on the waterways. We have the lake and we have Cuyahoga River right here. And there is no boating traffic, no recreational. I mean, occasionally I'll see a boat out there, but the water hasn't been frozen for at least a couple months, and there aren't any recreational or what would it be called? Well, no recreational boaters out there, and I guess that's kind of normal for this area, because they kind of they store all their recreational boats for the winter and put those away. But also, I don't know, what is it? Would it be considered industrial boating? I don't know, the big ore ships and things like that. All of the big industrial shipping type boats out on the lake. I haven't seen any of those. I think the Nautica Queen, the fine dining cruise ship, is still out there. That's down in the Flats area of Cleveland, where you can take I think that's still around and still going out on the lake. But, what happened to all the industrial shipping out on the lake and the river? I haven't been down on the river, but the Flats area seemed kind of dead the last time I was down there. And I'm not sure. I mean, I haven't investigated thoroughly, but I think I was at one point, the Cleveland Ballet left Cleveland. That's gone. I don't know that that's come back. The Cleveland Playhouse is down there. I worked there as a telemarketer for a while, but it doesn't seem like there are a lot of people going downtown to work or to, it doesn't seem like there's a lot going on downtown. I think someone had talked about rebuilding the highway system and rerouting it through the downtown Cleveland area. And I thought that was a bad idea. I guess that was going to create jobs, but I think, the highway system that exists doesn't need to be recreated to send it through the city. And what else is, the Port Authority looks like it's shut down. And what was wrong with that facility? They were going to build another facility. Was there a problem with the old one? But now it seems as though that's completely shut down. And don't these people and don't the government offices, don't they need to be open and working around the clock? And I kind of thought, I had kind of hoped that Cleveland would start competing with Tokyo and be, or New York City, and be a 24-hour city. But I guess there are a lot of people that just kind of wanted things to go back the way they used to be and slow down. And, I guess maybe the population growth needs to slow down too in that case, because, I don't know. But there's, I guess I thought that, maybe Cleveland could be a 24-hour city supporting world business and, providing 20 services and, I don't know. I thought Cleveland could be a 24-hour city, and that didn't happen. And the other idea I had about Cleveland, there's some large department store buildings in downtown Cleveland, and some of the streets in downtown Cleveland have gotten run down, and it really, and like, I haven't been down there for at least a few months, so I don't know if it's suddenly all cleaned up and back to normal, but it seemed pretty run down and barren, and I don't know. I had thought that there used to be an Higbee's department store, Halley's May Company's department stores, and I thought these great big department store buildings that were like they're high-rise buildings, old high-rise buildings. I don't know if they were built back around 1900 or when, but old high-rise buildings. I thought that it might be great to turn these old department store buildings into like an international, what would be like a bazaar? Is that a bazaar? Bazaar? Kind of like having a world market high rise where you had like all of the little areas were converted into international stores, and like import stores, and whether or not it's food or clothing or. And that you could take shopping back into the downtown area. I don't know what happened to downtown Cleveland. The little flower vendors with the buckets of flowers all over the street corners, they're all gone. I guess the florists moved in downtown to compete with the little flower vendors on the street corners, and then they got rid of the flower vendors on the street corners because they said that was competing with their business, and so they came up with a city ordinance that didn't allow those flower vendors to be. And it was beautiful down there. I mean, seeing all the people on the streets and picking up flowers, and on Friday nights. When I was working downtown, on a payday, I'd pick up some flowers, and it was nice to have. And I guess I was fortunate to be working and fortunate to have the money and be able to buy some flowers. And it wasn't expensive; it was just a nice thing to do. And I think a lot of people thought it was nice to do, and it looked nice. Having all those people and all those flowers on the street corners, and then the hot dog vendors, where did they all go? They're all gone. Well, I guess the people are all gone, and the hot dog vendors are gone too. And so what else is gone? I guess we still have football, basketball, and baseball. I guess that's pretty popular. I don't know. It might be nice to take one of those. I think there are some art galleries downtown. It might be nice to take one of the high-rise galleries, or not high-rise galleries, but one of the high-rise department stores, and turn it into an art gallery. With you could turn like a specialized building, and convert it into artists' studios, and I think that's been done to some degree, but have galleries, artists' galleries, and artist studios. I went out when I was out in Avon, Lakewood, with this, Avon, Ohio, where the power plant is. Right across the street, there was a little shopping center area, and in that area there was an artist's workshop, and in the artist's workshop area, there was like an artist's work. It looks like that's gone. I don't know what happened to that. So anyway, I think that's about it. Sorry, it's now 64 minutes, and It's Friday, April 27th, 2012. I just kept trying to come up with ideas to try to help Cleveland and, benefit Cleveland, and it seems like everyone's taken my ideas to use to destroy Cleveland, And I don't know, maybe Cleveland's not in as bad a shape as I think it is, but, I don't know. To me, it seems like Cleveland's been ruined. And it is now 8:27 a.m. and let me check the temperature out here again. It is, it looks like it's about 41 degrees out, according to the thermometer, and that's Fahrenheit. And again, this is Inta Mitterbach, and this is an amateur audio broadcast in Lakewood, Ohio of the United States, a Northern Border broadcast production. And thanks a lot. Have a great day.